You're already recording, I think.
I think I was just sharing my screen. Hold on one second. Okay, we are recording. Great. Just to make sure, that's super important. So, next slide. About BAWSCA. BAWSCA represents 26 agencies that include cities, water districts, a water company, and a university that purchase water wholesale from San Francisco Regional Water System. BAWSCA member agencies provide 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses and community organizations in Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BAWSCA's goal is high quality supply of water at a fair price. And they have two major program objectives. Outdoor water use represents the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in BAWSCA's service area. And their second objective is outdoor water use reductions through the use of water efficient plans and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that the future water supply needs of our communities are met. So BAWSCA has some ways to save. They have a rebate program through San Mateo County-wide water pollution prevention program that provides $1 to between $1 and $4 per square foot for lawn replacement and up to $100 in rebates for rain barrels. Additional ways to save, two new programs through BAWSCA are their Smart Control Rebate and Installation Program and a new revamped landscape program, which includes rebates for stormwater retention features. For more information you can find about rebates and about BAWSCA, you can look on bayareaconservation.org. And then upcoming webinars, you can also look at bayareaconservation.org, and the next kind of grouping of webinars will be in the fall. And if you are looking for some water-wise gardening in the Bay, some tips on water-wise gardening in the Bay Area, we also encourage you to check out bayareagardening.org. And if you are a Sunnyvale resident, we offer a rebate for replacing lawns and plants that require a lot of water with drought-tolerant plants or permeable hardscapes, and this is $1 per square foot through Santa Clara Valley Water District's rebate program, and also through Santa Clara Valley Water Rebate Program. Properties that connect a close washer to a gray water irrigation system are eligible for a rebate up to $200. So you can learn more at this link down below. And if you are a Sunnyvale resident looking for compost, compost is available at the Smart Station. Stop by Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. with your own mask, shovel, and container. And now I'd like to quickly introduce Frank. So Frank has been a gardener for over 65 years. Frank has a degree in horticulture, having studied at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and at the College of San Mateo. Frank also has a degree in business psychology from the University of San Francisco. He is the past president and the founding chapter of the California Landscape Contractors Association. He was voted Member of the Year by his peers in 2001, 2004, and 2019. He served 8 years as a director of research management for the California Landscape Contractors Association. He's a member of and has served for 3 years on the board of associations of professional landscape designers. His company, the Village Gardener, has won many awards. He has built 4 gardens at the prestigious San Francisco Flower Garden Show. In 2012, he was named Water Champion of the Year by Sustainable Silicon Valley for his work in water conservation. He has written the curriculum and teaches numerous classes at Foothill College. The Oprah Winfrey Network selected him as one of 5 across the United States whose small acts have big impact on the sustainable health of the environment. He was nationally recognized in Lawn and Landscape magazine. Frank teaches from the perspective of an environmentally sustainable contractor who has been in the business for 40+ years with a passion for sustainability and environmental stewardship. We're so excited to hear from you today, Frank. And with that, I will stop sharing and let you start sharing your screen. Thank you.
Well, I was working outside earlier in the garden. I feel like I got a bug on my head. Anybody seeing a bug on my head? No? Awful quiet out there. Anyway, I need to share screen, Lauren, if you could let me do that. There we go. So today we're going to talk about good bug, bad bug. And as you can see, I have my initial slide here of a praying mantis. We're going to talk about this beast later on. Anyway, there's about 100,000 species of insects that are found almost everywhere in North America, but few of them are harmful. Insects are very important to the food chain. They provide pollination services, honey, wax, shellac, food, scavenging, and they decompose stuff for us. Insects are compiled into 28 orders of insects, and or 32, depending on whether you're a lumper or a splitter. While this is a really nice number for entomologists, gardeners only need to focus on about 7 of these orders of insects. And so today we're going to focus on the 7 orders of insects that you will absolutely see in the garden. You will absolutely see Lepidoptera in the garden. Lepidoptera is your moths and your butterflies. And are they good guys or bad guys? Well, it really depends. So the difference between moths and butterflies is the moth is active at night, and that's why they have this poor coloration. Butterflies are active during the day, and that's why they have this type of coloration. Moths have dull colors, butterflies have bright. Wings rest at their sides when they stop flapping. Wings rest together and upright with butterflies. The moth has a feathered or pointed antenna, and the butterfly has a straight or clubbed antenna. Thick body on the moth and a thin body on the butterfly. So here's the deal with moths and butterflies. When they were evolving, they set up this process called metamorphosis, which means that the larva and the adult have different food sources, and the adult can fly. And that is a wonderful thing because it opened up the amount of food that it was able to eat because it could fly to it. This particular character cannot. So this happens to be a tobacco or a tomato hornworm, and it is one of the more common of the large caterpillars, and this can defoliate a tomato plant easily. They are large, and they frequently catch gardeners by surprise. So is this a good bug or a bad bug? Well, it actually is a good bug because this is what happens to this character. A trichogammon wasp will often lay its eggs on the outside of this tobacco hornworm, and it essentially parasitizes it. The wasp, the braconid, lays its eggs on the bodies of them, and when the eggs hatch, the braconioids feed inside the caterpillar. So essentially, this is a dead caterpillar walking. If you do get rid of this particular caterpillar, then you decrease the amount of wasps that you're going to have in your particular environment, which means you're going to have more of these particular caterpillars. If you do want to provide control, you do need to use a biological control, and we're going to talk about that in just a bit. So this particular larval form grows up to be this. This happens to be the adult female tomato hornworm. So this is what it grows up to be. So this happens to be a pollinator. So if you happen to wipe out this tomato hornworm, you're also wiping out this pollinator. This is an EO caterpillar, and it does have these spines on it. And these spines will sting you. Essentially what happens if you touch this particular thing, the spines break off, and then surprise, 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 these also have a toxin that's only injected into your skin when it breaks off into your skin. And what that toxin does is increase the amount of pain you feel. Good guy or bad guy? Everybody is saying bad guy. This is the adult. This is the EO butterfly adult. So far I'm seeing a pattern here. What most people think are bad guys here may not be bad guys after all, because the moths and the butterflies are primary pollinators in many of our gardens. This happens to be a fiery skipper, and this lays its eggs in turf grass. And primarily, it'll do some damage. It will spot out the lawn and do some damage. Good guy or bad guy? This happens to be the larval form of that particular fiery skipper. Here's the adult, here's the larva. The adult lays eggs. You'll see this thing flying around lawns in July, and it'll start laying its eggs, and then this happens out. This is another moth that has a distinctive brown pattern on it, and this snout. And this is the larval form, and it lays its eggs or lives in turf. It eats turf roots. This happens to be another one. This is a cutworm, and it again lives in turf. This is a parasitic wasp. This happens to be a hypocytor wasp, and it is attacking a beet armyworm larva. So let's think about this. If I'm a wasp, and I happen to be an adult female wasp, and I lay my eggs into this particular character, and this is where I started my life, inside of this larva. And when I hatch out, and I'm hungry, and I need to reproduce. So what am I going to be looking for? I'm going to be looking for these guys. How do I know where to find them? Well, this is where I live, so I know how they smell. So it's all pheromone driven. And so I very quickly will find these, attack them, lay eggs in them. These are very necessary for the survival of this particular wasp. This is a western tussock moth. We saw these on the oak trees this year. And you sometimes see them on fruit trees. In the larval form, they are eating machines. That's what they are. They need to eat so much so that they can metamorphose into an adult. This happens to be a defoliated branch of a fruit tree, and this is the tent caterpillar. This is a cabbage looper. The cabbage looper has 3 pairs of forelegs in the back and 3 up front, and so they loop essentially. They call them inchworms also. This is a fruit tree roller, another type of moth. So when we look at these particular kinds of insects, there's a couple of ways to notice that they're doing damage. You can actually see the damage on them, or if you're managing turf, and you shouldn't be because BAWSCA is giving you money to take out turf, you can do what's called a drench test. And all the drench test is you take 2 to 4 tablespoons of liquid dish soap, add it to a gallon of water, and you pour it in an area on your turf or your ground cover or an area where you think you might have larvae. And this soap is an irritant, and it causes the insects to come to the surface, and then you can see exactly what you have. The problem with larvae that is in the soil is there's three types. There's butterflies, there's flies, and then there's beetles. And you need to identify them, because if you're going to be using a organic method to control them, the control for Lepidoptera is different than the control for flies, that is different from the control for beetles. And so this drench test is very, very handy to figure out what you have. And these are some of the insects that will come up as a result of the drench test. You can find this chart and the next one on the University of California's IPM website. And it talks about the different soil-borne larvae and what to look for and how to manage it in a cultural manner. Here's another slide of that also. So this is on the UC IPM website. Very good website, by the way. And these drench tests will bring these particular insects up out of the ground, and then you go identify them. So this happens to be a citrus leaf miner. This is in Lepidoptera, and it's relatively harmless. So you really don't need to do too much with this on citrus. This is some of the damage, but if you remove the leaves of the ones that have the leaf miner in it, you essentially stop the cycle. If you don't remove the leaves, then the cycle will continue, and so you can do that. So when we look at a leaf that's been damaged by Lepidoptera, we see something very telling here. We notice that the Lepidoptera larvae do not eat the veins. So if you come to a leaf and you see damage on it and you're not sure because the insect is not there, you can clearly see that there's insect on this one. But if you can't see the insect and you see damage, if the veins are left, it's in all probability Lepidoptera. They also eat from the center out. So if you look at the edges of these leaves, yeah, they're damaged, but they don't start from the outside in, they start from the inside out. So you can pretty much guess that this is Lepidoptera damage. And so what's the control? If you're going to be spraying, this is what you should be using. This is a chemical called Bacillus thuringiensis, and this happens to be Kirkstocki. Kirkstocki is one of a number of formulations of Bacillus thuringiensis. We have Israeliensis, we have Subtilis, and one called Tenebrionis that we use a lot in the industry. What this is essentially a crystalline substance that gets into the body of the insect. How does it get there? Well, you spray it on the foliage, the caterpillar eats it, it gets inside of the body and essentially rips the stomach apart. The insect quits eating immediately and usually dies in about 2 days. So this is a very good control for Lepidoptera. This happens to be the commercial chemical called Dipel, and it comes in both liquid and a dry flowable. You don't want to buy an abundance of this stuff because it is a bacteria. It's alive and it won't last. So you want to buy the least amount that you're going to need if you're going to be spraying. And who doesn't want to kill butterflies and moths? You would buy the least amount of this stuff and use it up, or buy some and share it with your fellow gardeners. That's how you should handle this. You will absolutely see Hymenoptera in your garden. This is the family of insects, both good and bad. We have wasps and sawflies. We have bees and ants. We have yellow jackets. And so this is a fairly formidable family. This particular family of insect is the badass of the insect world. If an insect is going to wear a black leather jacket, it would be Hymenoptera. Bees, are honeybees good or bad? Well, they're good when they pollinate and produce honey, but bad when they sting you. The nice thing about honeybees is that they are one of our primary pollinators. If we lose the honeybees, we're in a lot of trouble because projections are if we lose the bees, 4 years later, we go. And that's probably not a good thing. This is Hymenoptera. This is a trichogamma wasp, and it is laying eggs into the body of an aphid. And we're going to talk about aphids in just a minute. Aphids, you need to understand, are good guys. They are part of the good guy chain. If there's no aphids, then you don't have trichogamma wasps, and that's not a good thing. So when you're looking, you happen to notice you have aphids on a plant, you want to look a little closer. You want to buy yourself a magnifying glass or get a loupe, L-O-U-P-E. That's right, L-O-U-P-E. And look at the wild kingdom that's happening in your plant material. If you see this is called an aphid mummy. This wasp lays its egg in a live aphid, and this is what happens to it when the wasps hatch out. We already looked at this particular character where the braconid lays its eggs on the back of this this larval form of the tomato hornworm, and this particular character is already dead. There's no way this thing is going to survive this. The other one in the Hymenoptera I want you to be aware of is the eumenid wasp, and this character picks up caterpillars, flies to its nest, and feeds them to its young. We dissected a nest up at Foothill College, and we found 22 what was left of the caterpillars inside of the wasp's nest. So this is another good guy. A lot of people mistake this for a yellow jacket. It is not. This is a eumenid wasp. This is a yellow jacket. Most people don't understand the yellow jacket. The yellow jacket is actually a good guy. It's just that we don't understand them culturally, and we put them in the bad guy category. So what you need to understand about the culture of this thing is that if you have dead things in your yard, a squirrel, for example, or something, meat dies in your yard, these and the ants will eat it. And so they're good guys. Our biggest issue is that on July 4th, we decide we're going to have a barbecue. And so we run over to Big Box and we buy this and we hang it over the picnic table. And then we're surprised when little Junior is drinking his Coke and there's a yellow jacket in it and it stings him on the tongue. Well, for one thing, this doesn't go over the picnic table. It goes in the corners of the yard. This has an attractant in it. And most people don't understand the attractant is there to attract the yellow jacket. So here's the correct way to get yellow jackets. The queen overwinters, finds a hole in the ground or an empty log and overwinters. And she's alone. And she spends the time there until the soil begins to warm up in the spring. When the soil warms up in the spring, she lays 10 eggs, and then she leaves the nest. And she is hungry. She hasn't eaten for months. And she's looking for something sweet. So instead of using this trap, you get the other type of trap that looks like a baggie, and you pour apple juice or cranberry juice in it and hang it out. The key is that the queen is larger than the typical yellow jacket. If you can catch the queen before she has time to go back into that nest, you reduce the amount of yellow jackets in your area by 5 to 10,000, because that nest will take off. So you want to understand the culture of this thing and get the queen before. You're never going to wipe this insect off the face of the earth. They're way too smart for that. Ants, good guys or bad guys? Ooh, I have a love-hate with relationship with ants. I love following them around and seeing what they're up to. They're fascinating creatures. But in your kitchen, they're not so fascinating, especially when they attack the sugar bowl. They also domesticate aphids. So they'll physically pick up an aphid and move it to newer foliage on the plant because they want this honeydew. And you can see this ant partaking of the honeydew of the aphid. Essentially what this is, the aphid is eating and it has excess carbohydrates. What are carbohydrates? Well, cakes and cookies, what carbohydrate essentially is. And to a ant, this is cake and cookie time. Ants will also swarm insects that go after aphids. So this happens to be a lady beetle. And lady beetles need 50 aphids a day to survive. Ants are voracious protectors of the aphids. So if you've got an aphid problem, in all probability, you've got an ant problem, especially on your citrus trees. And so there's a way that you can catch them. You put some duct tape around the base of the citrus tree, and then you just put tanglefoot down. And there is some controversy about tanglefoot because good insects sometimes get trapped by the tanglefoot. But this is much better than a chemical solution to your aphids. If you've got ant problems, you can buy this. This happens to be an ant bait station. This ant bait station uses a 1% boron solution that you pour into this station. So essentially what you do is you invert this station, take the bottom off, and then you pour the ant bait into this bulbous section, put the bottom or top, everything is relative, back on it, and put it in an area near where the ants are. You want the ants to find this, and this is what happens. They go in, they partake of this honeydew, or it's a boron solution that has that is sweet to them. It's mimicking the aphid honeydew. So the ants pick this up and they carry it back to their nest. They feed it to the larva and to the queen. And in about 10 days, you essentially wipe out that particular nest. If you use the ever popular sprays that you can get at big box stores, you're exacerbating the problem because you're never going to get rid of them. This works and it gets rid of them. Where do I buy this, Frank? Well, there is a place in California called Rankin Batova. No, not Rankin Batova. It's RINCON VITOVA. Rankin Batova, not ARRIN. And they sell this and the honeydew for about $50. You get 2 ant bait stations and the honeydew mixture. Fill these things up, put them out near your ants where you have problems with ants, and in about 10 days you'll wipe out that nest. Are ants good guys? Yeah, kind of. They, along with the yellow jackets, will take care of dangerous things in the garden. Is tanglefoot dangerous to pets? Whoa, they'll get it on themselves. It's probably uncomfortable, but it won't kill them or hurt them. So no, And this bait station is designed to keep pets from munching on the boron bait, because that can be toxic to pets if they get enough in them. But this has a stake on it, so you can stake it down so they can't tip it over. So this is common right now. These perfect circles that are cut out of leaves, and it's made by this particular character, and this is called a leaf cutter, and it cuts these leaves out to form a nest like this. And it really doesn't harm the plant. So if you see these circles cut out, just leave it alone. In about 6 weeks, they'll stop doing it. And they don't damage the entire leaf. They just take a little chunk out of it to use in their nest. An amazing nest. They usually lay about 6 eggs in this particular thing. If you see this on your plants, these are galls. These are made by a wasp. And this happens to be Andricus that is laying its eggs. Essentially, what the oak tree is doing is forming this protection around the eggs. It's a chemical response to what they consider a threat, and it's not really a threat. All the wasp is doing is laying its eggs. This happens to be a pear sawfly, and this will eat a lot of leaves. You can essentially just pick these things up and drop them into a soapy bucket of water, or spray them off. They won't hurt much. This happens to be a willow gall sawfly. You see the female eggs on the underside of the willow leaves, and they form a gall around them. Nothing really to worry about here. Sometimes the gall will change color to a reddish. No real controls are really recommended for this character. You will absolutely see Diptera or flies in your garden. Diptera are your flies. The house fly carries about 600 different types of bacteria, and many of these are linked to human infection, including blood poisoning and pneumonia. So flies can spread bacteria from place to place on their legs, their feet, and their wings, and every step taken by a fly can transfer live bacteria. So if you look inside your sugar bowl and you see these little black spots in there, in all probability, you have been visited by a fly. That happens to be fly feces. Excellent in a cup of coffee. These are maggots. These are the larval form of the fly. So we talked about Lepidoptera in larval form. Well, now we're talking about maggots. How do I tell the difference between maggots and Lepidoptera larva? Well, Lepidoptera larva has legs. This character does not. The way to get rid of this is you can use diatomaceous earth, which is the fossilized remains of a hard shell larva. It will essentially dry these maggots out without harming any of the other garden pests. And there's a couple of ways we're going to talk about how to control these characters. This is a mosquito, absolutely a bad guy. Significant amount of human beings have died because of the mosquito. You want to make sure that you control the mosquito in your garden, and one of the ways that you can control it is another type of bacillus. And this happens to be Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis. And you can buy these mosquito dunks in most of the hardware stores in and around the area to control mosquitoes. If you have drain lines coming off your roof, don't forget about putting mosquito dunks in those, because those drain lines usually have enough water where the mosquito larvae can survive. This will only kill the larval form, the wigglers that live in water. A mosquito only needs 1 inch of water for the wigglers to be alive. So check outside buckets and such. You want to make sure that there's no standing water in them. If you do have a fountain, you want to break one of these into about 1/4 and drop it in your fountain. It'll last about 2 months. So about every 2 months or so, drop another 1/4 in there. Again, this is a live bacteria. The bacteria usually doesn't survive from year to year, so you want to buy a fresh one every year to make sure that you get the insect under control. These are leaf miners. This is Diptera. Essentially what it does is the adult lays its eggs inside of the epidermis of a leaf, and then the leaf miner tunnels its way through. If you break the leaf off, you are essentially wiping out or stopping the cycle. And that's the best way to get rid of these. You can't spray them because they're inside the leaf epidermis, and there's usually not enough toxicant in the spray to knock these down. This is a European crane fly, and happens to be the larva of that. So this is the beetles. The creator must have loved the beetles because he made a lot of them. It is the largest family of insects on the face of the earth, or order of insects on the face of the earth, but it is not the most damaging. Lepidoptera by far and away is the most damaging. Coleoptera or beetles are a mix of good guys and bad guys. And we're going to talk about some of the good guys. This happens to be a lady beetle, and a lady beetle will eat 50 aphids a day in adult or larval form. So if you kill aphids, you're essentially killing lady beetles. So you don't want to do that. And by the by, these you do not want to purchase at your local nursery in these cute little white ice cream containers. Don't want to do that. Here's the situation. Lady beetles go into what is called diapause. And when they're in diapause, they do not eat or reproduce. So let me repeat that. They are in diapause. They do not eat or reproduce. They aggregate. So you up in El Dorado County, all of the lady beetles go together and they aggregate on plants. You see them up in Muir Woods too a lot, on equisetum that grows up in that area near the water. They aggregate. And so these companies pay guys to go out there with 5-gallon buckets and scrape the lady beetles off and put them in a 5-gallon bucket. They bring the 5-gallon bucket down to the bottom of the hill. They weigh them. They pay the collector. They put the lady beetles into a ice cream carton and put them in a cold place, which causes them to go even more dormant. And then they put them in your local nursery where you go and buy them because you want to have an environmental moment with your son and daughter. And you all go out into the backyard and the violins begin to play. You're going to release the lady beetles. Environmental moment is just going to be so grand. Except the insects do not cooperate. They fly away. Why? They're in diapause. Don't buy them. Don't buy them. Thank you. Coleoptera, dung beetles. Coleoptera dung beetles, if it wasn't for them, we would be up to our eyeballs in dung. So these are good guys, and you'll see them rolling these balls in your garden. This is beetle larva, and it's really easy to tell beetle larva because they have this very prominent head with these mandibles and 3 legs on each side. If you have skunks or raccoons that are digging in your garden, you in all probability have grubs. Remember that drench test I showed you earlier? 1 to 2 tablespoons or 2 to 4 tablespoons of dish soap to a gallon of water. Pour it into the soil and you'll see these particular characters coming up. If you have issues with these guys, and you should, you can get rid of them quite easily by buying St. Gabriel Organics Milky Spore. This will not only kill any typical grub, but it'll also knock down Japanese beetle. This stuff is cheap. You can get it on Amazon. And as you can see, this treats 7,000 square feet. That's a lot. But Milky Spore is the correct way to go after beetles in your garden, and especially in their larval form. Beetles in larval form are essentially eating machines. Not as damaging as Lepidoptera, but they will eat. This is the other one. This is all natural grub control. Monterey makes this one, and it's also a very good product. I like the Milky Spore a little bit better, but you know, if I had a choice, I would use either one of them. This is a potato beetle, and there is a Bacillus thuringiensis that will knock this one down. The formulation is Tenebrionis, Tenebrionis, Tenebrionis. And Bacillus thuringiensis tenebrionis is very effective on the larva of this particular potato beetle. So if you have issues with it in your garden, it will take care of them. Mexican bean beetle is a species of lady beetle, which is a notorious agricultural pest. It is one of the few lady beetles that will feed on plants rather than insects. And this one is difficult to get rid of, as well as the cucumber beetle. The cucumber beetle leaves a bacteria that will cause plants to wilt. You want to make sure that you get in there and pick these things off of the plant before the population increases. Asparagus beetle. Who wants a beetle to eat your asparagus? There are some chemicals that are very effective of knocking this one down. The one I recommend is a pyrethrin, not a pyrethroid. You want to look for the THRIN, pyrethrin. And that is essentially a chrysanthemum flower that has been treated in a special way to extract the chemical that has insecticidal qualities, and it is available. Don't get fooled and buy a pyrethroid. Pyrethroids are dangerous. So this is the life cycle of a Japanese beetle in Coleoptera. In January, it's hunkered down pretty low in the soil. As the soil warms up and the roots of these plants start to grow, it starts to eat. When it starts to eat and the soil warms up in June, then it pops its head out of the soil, lays its eggs, and starts this cycle all over again. So if you were applying Milky Spore in this area, June, July, August, there's a good possibility that you're going to break this cycle and keep the Japanese beetle down. Again, St. Gabriel Organics, Milky Spore, excellent product, very inexpensive. This happens to be a Hoplia beetle. It likes roses, and well, it'll also chew on calla, citrus, iris, lilies, magnolia, olives, poppies, and strawberries. But the trick with this one is that it likes light colored flowers, whites, yellows, apricots, and pinks. So if you have roses that are in those 4 different colors, you're in all probability going to attract a Hoplia beetle. Very easy to control this thing. You just hand pick them off the flowers, drop them into a bucket of soapy water, or shake the blooms of your plant and they'll drop off the flower. Or you can just clip the blossoms that are infected by this. A lot of people call this the rose slug, although I'm not sure exactly why. But hand picking is a really good way to get this one. Neem is an anti-fedant. The active ingredient in neem oil is from the Azadirachta indica tree, and the active ingredient is azadirachtin. And this particular formulation is made by Azatrol. I like the Azatrol blend of azadirachtin. Essentially, this thing causes the plant to be a repellent, an anti-fedant, and an insect growth regulator. So the neem oil, if sprayed on a plant, it's very bitter, and the insect won't eat it. That's the anti-fedant and repellent quality. The insect growth regulator is a little bit different in that it somehow interferes with the juvenile hormone in an insect. So if I'm an insect, I need to molt and grow. I have an exoskeleton and I can only go so far with the body that I have right now. I've got to shed off my exoskeleton and grow. The presence of the juvenile hormone in an insect prevents it from molting. And somehow this neem oil gets in there and mimics this particular hormone, which means that the insect can't grow. It essentially dies in its own bag of bones. And this is an organic product. It's very good product. Here's the multiple action of neem oil. It's an anti-fedant, an IGR, an insect growth regulator. It does interfere with the reproductive processes of insects. It does kill eggs. It is broad spectrum. Whatever it hits, it kills. It can be used in combination with a number of other pesticides. Resistance inhibition, since this is a product that comes from a tree, the chances that insects are going to become resistant to this pesticide are very, very low. This neem oil also has repellency abilities, and we're back to anti-fedant. So azadirachtin or neem oil is a primary control for insects in your garden if you in fact want to control insects. Any soft-bodied insect it hits, it kills. If you happen to be spraying and you hit a bee, goodbye bee. So you need to be careful about spraying this. Best time to spray, early morning, late evening, when the pollinators are not flying around. Excellent product. These happen to be eucalyptus longhorn beetles, and they are attacking eucalyptus trees right now, and a lot of people are saying, yay. Well, you know, I happen to like eucalyptus trees. They provide habitat and food for insects and mammals and other creatures in the winter when not much else is blooming. But they do damage to eucalyptus trees. This is essentially the larval form. You can see the bleeding, or it's called an exudate on the outside of the uke. And so you want to be careful about that particular insect. You will absolutely see hemiptera in your garden. And what is hemiptera? Well, this is hemiptera. This happens to be a tiger beetle, and this thing is fast. It can move at the rate of 125 times its own body length in 1 second. So it moves real quick. And this is a good guy. This eats a lot of other insects. And so you want to make sure that when you're spraying, you don't hit these. This is scale. There's a couple of different kinds of scale. There's armored scale and soft scale, basically. What happens is the scale, when they're crawling around, and they're called crawlers, and you see these on citrus, you see them on cedar trees. if you can get them when they're in the crawling state, you can control them. You can use neem oil for that. That's an excellent choice of product when they're in the crawler stage. These happen to be aphids, as well as these. And you can see the different variations of aphids. You can see the yellows, a few browns in here, and of course the white aphids that are all over the place. And everybody has been taught, when you have aphids, you just spray them off with a little bit of water. And that's very true, but what happens to all of the other insects that depend on aphids for their livelihood? This happens to be an ant that is taking the honeydew from the aphid. It's excessive carbohydrates. And these are whitefly. And you're seeing some eggs there also. We're going to talk about, I'm lumping aphids and whitefly together because they both produce honeydew and they are both protected by ants. And there's a couple of ways of controlling them that we'll look at in just a bit. These are mealybugs. They also produce a honeydew, and it's kind of sticky. And this is a result of that. This is sooty mold. Essentially, what is happening is those excess carbohydrates are forming into a mold on the trees, which prevents photosynthesis because it's blocking the cells. So these three characters will produce excess carbohydrates, which in turn produces sooty mold. See, what time is it? Oh, I'm in pretty good shape, I think. What do I go? 11:30, I think. Anyway, somebody will tell me I have to stop when I need to, I think. So when you see these on your plant material and you want to control them, and you have to make a decision, and it has to be an informed decision. When we talk about integrated pest management, the primary or the prime directive is an informed decision based on knowledge. So you want to learn about these characters instead of reacting. Grab the water hose, spray them off. Grab the sprays, the insecticide, spray them off. That's not informed decision. That's not knowledge-based. That's reaction. And we don't want to do that because that's what's causing many of the problems with the decline in insects in the world. Insects have declined significantly in the last 10 years, and that's not good. We lose the insects, we're gone, we're done. We definitely need them. So when we think about how to control them, we want to get a product that is relatively safe. And I say relatively safe because insecticide means to kill. It means to kill an insect. So you are taking a life when you use these insecticides. Sometimes it's better just to leave them alone and see how the other insects come in and clear these particular characters out. And I'm going to give you an example. If I spray and there happens to be ladybug larvae in this environment, I kill the ladybug larvae along with the aphids. Aphids hatch out every 10 days. The ladybug larva, in all probability, has been wiped out. All of the eggs and everything on the ladybug larva have been wiped out. So the increase in population is almost 2 times with the aphids because you sprayed. So you make an informed decision when you want to spray. The ladybug larva will not recover. The aphids will. Every 10 days, they're popping babies out. In fact, aphids are born pregnant. It's not a mother-daughter. It's a sister-sister relationship. They're born pregnant. As well as whitefly. Whitefly can get out of control rather quickly. Neem oil is one way to control them. You want to make sure that you spray the underside of the leaves of the white fly, because that's where they are. You'll also see these little nets under there. And that's a real good indication you've got a white fly issue. And then, of course, mealybug, neem oil will knock these down also. Again, you want to make sure that there are no predators that are working this, because the predators will come in and take this population down. If it's to this point, this is a pretty significant infestation. I think I would make the informed decision to come in and spray in this instance. But if you're seeing 1 or 2 or 10 or 20, probably won't spray. And then, of course, sooty mold. If you do have sooty mold on your plants, this happens to be a bay tree. They're very susceptible to sooty mold. You want to wash it off with water. Just spray down the leaves and it'll knock this stuff down. If you have a very large infestation, you may have to do it a couple of times to get sooty mold off of it. This is a leaf hopper. Leaf hoppers have come into prominence in the last 20 years or so. These vector diseases, so it carries various diseases in its mouth parts. It actually has a specialized chamber for that. And when it takes a bite out of a plant, it leaves some of that bacteria around and inside the plant tissues, which causes a disease. So the big one is, of course, with the grape crops up in Napa with Pierce's disease. It's caused by leaf hoppers. In our area, we're starting to see the oleanders being taken down with what is called oleander scorch. And it is a bacteria that is carried by the leaf hoppers. The leaf hopper gets on that particular oleander, leaves the bacteria behind, and it causes it to look like the bush has been burned. Oleander scorch, once the insect has left that bacteria, there's no cure for that. It's going to eventually kill that oleander. If you've driven up to Sacramento in the last year or two, on Highway 80, they used oleander as part of their traffic divide between east and west. And you're seeing the oleander starting to die. You'll see 5 or 6 oleanders that are healthy and 1 or 2 that are dead, interspersed with the healthy. So this insect is a nasty one. This is the false chintz bug, and this is the chintz bug. This happens to go after turf, usually in the soil. Lays its eggs. You can always tell hemiptera by the crossed wings. So we know we're in hemiptera, aphids are in hemiptera. This crossed wing pattern. Coleoptera has a straight wing pattern on it, and that's how you tell the difference between the two. These will go in and do some damage to turf and some of the other crops. Again, you want to use your soil drench to identify what you have and then make an informed decision as to what type of control that you want to use. This is the Asian wax psyllid. This absolutely wiped out the Florida citrus crop. Wiped it out. And it is headed for California. California is a citrus growing state, so the county ag department are looking for this particular insect. If you do see it on your citrus trees, you want to call your county extension agent and get them out there to verify that you have it. The damage is significant, and they have to stop this thing before it gets out of control. You might see these waxy things on your tree. How do they treat it? Well, they're going to take your citrus tree out. But it's better than this thing spreading all over the state of California. There is no real control. It's also called greening disease because it causes the leaves to have this odd green pattern to them. Some people might think this is chlorosis, but it is not chlorosis. This happens to be greening disease, or HLB. This is the Brugada bug. We're starting to see an increase in Brugada bug, especially on brassicas. A lot of people mistake this for the harlequin bug, which is a little bit different. This particular bug has a very particular pattern to it. The harlequin bug is about 1/4 of an inch, whereas the Brugada bug is about 1/8 of an inch. If you're growing brassicas, cabbages, those kinds of plants, and it smells, it's got a rancid cabbage smell. If you look down into the inner part of the leaves, you might see these particular insects in there. And that's the Brugada bug. And it is in Hemiptera family, and it has this shield, which is another part of it. It's called the scutella. This can be controlled with neem oil. This happens to be the eggs of the Brugada bug. And this is some of the damage that it'll do. It seems to make this stippling on the leaves on the outside, and you're going to get a smell to it. It's like a rancid cabbage smell. And this is what it does. It just can really do some damage to brassica. Pretty good damage. This is the brown marmorated stink bug. This a particular character it should be controlled. It is in Hemiptera. This happens to be the rough stink bug, and this is the brown marmorated. You want to make sure that you've got the right identification. You can always go to the University of California's website and you can see these, and they'll help you identify it. In fact, they have a very nice movie that will help you identify whether you have a problem with marmorated stink bug or whether it's just a rough stink bug. Rough stink bug won't really do much damage. They also call this the kissing bug because it gives a disease. This is some of the damage that it can do. This is the larva of the marmorated stink bug on the tree. You will absolutely see Orthoptera in your garden, and these are the grasshoppers. This is one of the hardest to control in any garden. If you get an infestation of grasshoppers, they're very difficult. There's no real spray that can go after them. You almost have to just go in and pick them off and drop them into a bucket of soapy water. Don't let the population get out of control. These are cockroaches. Cockroaches have increased in the last 10 years, along with bed bugs. Interestingly enough, we used to spray a chemical under the baseboards of our homes and buildings, and that not only killed the cockroach, but it also killed the bed bugs. We don't do that anymore. We trap. And so we've seen a significant increase in bed bug populations because we're now trapping for cockroaches. Cockroaches are beginning to understand this trapping system. So you need to make sure that you understand that. This is a praying mantis, good bug or bad bug. This bug is a generalist. It eats everything. Once it doesn't look at a bug and say, oh, this is a bad bug, and eats only the bad bugs. It eats all bugs. If you have a hummingbird feeder, you will notice that praying mantis will hang around your hummingbird feeder, and they will snatch a hummingbird out of the air and eat it. So good bug, bad bug? Probably not one that you want to have in your garden. Once it finishes with all the bad bugs, it's going to eat all the good bugs. It's a generalist. Yes, it's a nice little bug to have around for kids. They're fascinated by them. I get it. But this isn't the kind of control that you want. If you are making a decision about what, if you want to bring in an insect, I would not bring in praying mantis. I would bring in lacewings, either green lacewings or brown lacewings. You can buy 1,000 eggs of lacewings and hang it's on a card, and you hang this card on a branch in your garden, and it's about $8 for 1,000 lacewings. It's a much better predator of insects in your garden, and it eats primarily insects that you don't want to have in your garden. It will go after aphids, caterpillars, and a number of other insects. So you want to bring in the lacewings. You don't really want to bring this one in, or the lady beetles. The lacewings are much more effective in taking care of insect problems than both the praying mantids and the lady beetles. You will absolutely see Odonoptera. These are your dragonflies. Dragonflies are mosquito eaters. So they have a specialized pouch on them, and they fly through the air and they gather up mosquitoes, and they put them into this pouch until they can land, and then they will eat the mosquitoes. These will also eat adult butterflies and moths if it can catch them. And this is a much more efficient flyer than both butterflies and moths. Beautiful, beautiful insect. I was outside watching one a couple days ago. It's just a gorgeous insect. You will absolutely see Syrphidae in your garden. This is a syrphid fly. It looks similar to a yellow jacket. It has the coloration of a yellow jacket, but this is the one that you see making these 90-degree turns in midair, and it hovers like a helicopter. The other name for this is hoverfly. This is a good guy. The larva goes after aphids like crazy. It has this weird habit in that it rears up with an aphid in its mouth, and it looks like it's playing with this aphid before it eats it. This is the larva of the syrphid fly, and it is definitely a good guy. Here's the adult next to a lady beetle. And this is what the adult looks like. It does have the coloration of a yellow jacket, but it doesn't have the same wings, and it has what's called a halter, which helps it hover in midair. So these are the insect orders that you will absolutely see in your garden: Lepidoptera, Hemiptera, Hymenoptera, Orthoptera, Coleoptera, Odonoptera, Diptera, and Syrphidae. Oops, I almost forgot. Snails and slugs. So snails and slugs are very good eaters in the garden, and everyone is saying, bring in the sluggo because it's so gentle. You want to be careful with sluggo if you have pets. There have been some instances where the other ingredients in sluggo have poisoned pets. So if you are using sluggo, you want to be careful with your cats and dogs in the garden. This is a much better product than metaldehyde. Metaldehyde absolutely will poison your cat or dog, but sluggo is an iron phosphate, and it's very good in controlling snails and slugs. Much better than the metaldehyde that has been around for years in snail bait. You can also get a pie tin and put the pie tin level with the surface of the soil line and fill it with cheap beer, and the snails and slugs will go into this and can't get out. I see somebody is asking about earwigs. You can do the same thing with earwigs. Just put a tin or an old margarine tub, even with the soil line, they fall into it. They can't get back out. Earwigs are not very harmful. They don't eat very much. You usually can roll up a piece of newspaper and put a rubber band around it. Earwigs crawl in the middle of the night, and in the morning you pick it up, shake it into a bucket of soapy water, and you'll collect all the earwigs you need. So that's all I have for you today. I am going to stop sharing this and see if there's any questions. That bug's still on my head. Not sure. It feels like something's crawling around up there. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank. That was great.
I hope so. Somebody had a question about box elder bugs. They're not very harmful. Yeah, they do eat box elder trees, but they're more of a nuisance bug than anything else. I see little piles of dirt around my driveway near sidewalks. Yeah, those are definitely ants. Ants will dig into areas and have these piles of soil that are around. Ants are real big right now. Ants are going nutso crazo because there's a lot of food for them out and about. So you want to make sure that you get your ants under control before they end up in your sugar bowl. Any other questions? Peach leaf curl. So peach leaf curl, if you don't do dormant spray in December and January, you're going to get peach leaf curl. And the way you control that is you get kelp, and it's a liquid, and you apply by spraying onto the peach leaf curl, and the new foliage comes out clean. The old foliage will not disappear. Well, eventually it'll drop off, but that's a good way if you've got peach leaf curl because you didn't use a dormant spray in December or January. Lizards, yeah, lizards will take care of a lot of insects in a garden. I happen to have lizards around my place, and they do eat a lot of the insects, so good question. Mosquitoes have a hatching season? Yeah, they do. They're hatching out right now. Whitefly on persimmon. Neem oil is safe to spray on persimmon. Leaf miners on a peat crop, essentially just remove the leaves and drop them into soapy water. There's no real spray for that. What can you do about insects in the outdoor garbage pail? Well, you can let them eat, or you can spray some neem oil in there, and that will knock them down. Fruit flies and olives. Oh, great question. There is a particular type of yeast. The name of the yeast is leaving me right now. But if you essentially take a water bottle and you punch a couple of holes in the top of the water bottle, and you put this type of yeast in it. Tornado yeast, I believe that's the name of it, but I might be off on the name. It's a specific type of yeast that attracts the adult olive fruit fly. You can also apply a spinosad, and a spinosad is a organic chemical that will knock down olive fruit fly. When do you apply kelp to peach trees? Whenever you see the peach leaf curl. So we're coming out of the peach leaf curl time right now. So it's you're almost not going to see much of it. Coffee grounds is a slug snail deterrent. Yeah, I've heard of that. I have used it before. The issue I have with coffee grounds is that it seems, and there's been a lot of studies on this, it seems to stunt plant growth. I've seen back and forth studies, and it depends on species again. Some plants it affects, others doesn't seem to bother. So you just need to watch the plants. If you're growing a specific kind of plant and you see um, the plant stunting because you're using coffee grounds, you may want to back off. Eggshells, yeah, more importantly, eggshells are very beneficial because they produce a lot of calcium. If you're growing tomatoes, you definitely want to grind up your eggshells to almost powder. The smaller you can get them, the better. And then you just sprinkle them around the base of the tomatoes, and it feeds a lot of calcium to them. And as another benefit, snails don't really like crawling over it. It does bother them. What plants are susceptible to root fungus and what can be done about it? Oh gosh, everything is susceptible to root fungus. If you're overwatering your plants, you have about an 80% increase in susceptibility to root funguses. Is the kelp a spray? Yeah, it's liquid and you just put it in a sprayer. A little hand sprayer, is all you need. Just spritz it on your plants. It works pretty well. That's it. That all? Well, I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank BAWSCA and the city of Sunnyvale for paying my outrageous salary to appear here today. I always enjoy giving these classes. We want to make sure that we use a knowledge-based system to control insects and not go crazo by applying pesticides that are harming the environment. So I want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Frank. And I know I learned a lot, and I know the recording will eventually be available online at BAWSCA's website. So look out for that. And
perfect.
Yeah, if there's no more questions, I think we just have a lot of thank yous in the QA box to you, Frank. So.
Oh, you're all welcome. Yeah,
Great.
anytime. I am available for presentations. You can contact me through BAWSCA. I'd love to speak to your garden club or whatever. I do a lot of public speaking, so please bring me in. I can talk about just about anything. Most of it's made up. Most people don't know that. No, it's not. I know some stuff. So again, thank you so much.
Amazing. Okay, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. We are going to end now.
Stay healthy.